So another day, another aggressive manoeuvre by China as it ramps up threats to take control of Taiwan. Now, this is not some tiny routine flyover which we saw at the beginning of the year. China gathered together a battle group, including its aircraft carrier Liaoning, in waters right next to Taiwan. And in response, the US Navy has sent in one of its carriers and its strike group into the South China Sea to conduct what they also call routine operations. Japan as well has deployed a destroyer in the area. Now, without beating this up too much, the hostility and intimidation is building each and every week in that region. And Australia needs to be extremely vigilant, and I'm sure the new Defence Minister, Peter Dutton, is all over it. Meanwhile, the Chinese have held, well, a farcical press conference-cum-video presentation today at the Canberra Embassy to smother the regime's genocide of the Muslim Uyghur minority in Xinjiang. Calling the event Xinjiang a wonderful land, they crossed to Xinjiang, where 6 minutes of propaganda footage was played. Now, I don't know whether this was China trying to prevent the world from boycotting their Olympic Games or a message to their own people, who I think may smell an inhumane rat. We don't know. But the presentation showed the territory in full bloom, plush with produce, cutaways to endless happy smiling faces, normal education classes for the masses, and a thriving region without any of the previous evidence of torture, rape, imprisonment or poverty.
There has been no violent terrorist attacks for more than 4 years in a row. Realizing all ethnic groups' aspiration for peace and stability.
It was all a farce and flew completely in the face of the video evidence that has emerged from Xinjiang in the last 2 years. It's a joke. No terrorism, no worries. About as believable as the Tooth Fairy, I'm sorry to tell you. You know, they're happy to show off their new stage video, but they won't allow foreign journalists or the United Nations anywhere near the region.
What is it that they're hiding? If it's such a thriving area, then why aren't they opening their doors to journalists to go in and see for themselves that it's such a beautiful country or state or area to live in?
And of course, the regime continues to breach its trade obligations and agreements, not just with Australia, but worldwide. Which brings me to how some nations are dealing with the behaviour of the Chinese. Australia, take note. The Premier of an impoverished province in the Solomon Islands, the province of Malaysia, refuses to accept any aid at all from the Chinese government, and they are there with the checkbooks. Daniel Sudani says the Solomon Islands national government has been compromised and corrupted by China's interference. That's their modus operandi for these smaller nations. Now, he's maintaining his province's connections to Taiwan and wants Australia to up its involvement in the Solomons to save the nation. Pretty gutsy stuff. And of course, we should come to their aid and form some kind of barrier between them and the Chinese. Meanwhile, another world minnow, Lithuania, has now left the Beijing-sponsored Baltic Trade Pact 17+1. It is China's Belt and Road strategy in the Baltic, and Lithuania are out, cutting ties now with both China and previously Russia. If tiny minnow-sized governments and economies are prepared to sacrifice big Chinese money for their own sovereignty and future direction, so too can Australia. On 3 different fronts at the moment, China is playing some very dangerous games at the expense of poorer nations and defenceless people in their own country. I think Australia can learn a lot from the Solomons and Lithuania about courage and independence.